It's not the cure-all of our housing shortage, but it's one solution that I think is easy and can be very quickly implemented.
Welcome back to Square Off. Phoenix Vice Mayor Yasemin Ansari says casitas, small homes in backyards, could be an answer to the lack of affordable housing in the valley. By an 8-to-1 vote last week, the city council agreed, but questions remain about who will benefit from the smaller homes and some other things as well. Joining us to discuss the news of the week are Democratic State Representative Analise Ortiz of West Phoenix and Chip Scutari, a former Capitol reporter who's co-founder of S&C Communications, a bipartisan public relations firm. Welcome back to Square Off.
Thank you.
Welcome to Square Off.
Thank you.
Great to have you both with us. Representative Ortiz, you were a strong supporter of the casitas ordinance. You spoke in favor of it. Realistically, who is this going to help? How many people could this possibly help?
Look, we need to remember that when we're talking about these backyard casitas, we're talking about families like in my community of Maryvale who can put up a casita in the backyard for their abuela or abuelo to retire with dignity and be close to their family caregiver, or for the college student who wants to be close to mom and dad while having their own private space and saving money. It will come down to implementation. I hope that there will be opportunities for potentially grants and ways to make it easier and more affordable for all Arizonans or all Phoenicians to be able to build these casitas.
I'm glad you mentioned grants and affordability because I know from experience, having priced this out, it costs about $50,000 or more to build one of these. A lot of folks don't have 50 grand hanging around. What about that affordability issue?
I mean, I think that's part of the issue, but to take a step back and go from a 30,000-foot level, these casitas, I think, are just, they may be a small tool in a toolbox, but I think what it signals, hopefully, is a culture shift, and that culture shift means affordable housing can be seen as an asset and not a liability in communities. And I think this is just one piece. We need more financing options. We need more, philanthropic organizations to step up. And I think when you look at, say it's a wheel and affordable housing is in the middle, the spokes are, you need education, educational attainment, you need financing, you need transportation. Speaking of transportation, it's huge to have more urban density so that these folks, wherever they live in these casitas or affordable housing, that people who are essential workers, hospital workers, nurses, cops, firefighters, teachers, have that availability to take light rail, to take buses. So I think it's a wheel in the spoke, and that this is just a small piece of the puzzle, but hopefully the brilliant lawmakers at the Capitol, like Representative Ortiz here, will work on a bipartisan effort to get more affordable housing.
And we'll talk about them in just a minute. First, I want to put up what Councilman Jim Waring said. He was the lone no vote. Let's listen to his soundbite.
At some point, we don't know what's going on kind of behind the scenes. We don't check every construction site unless we know that it's there.
Questions about permitting for the casitas and maybe a Wild West of casitas. Questions about whether they're going to be used as Airbnbs by many people. Because in some areas, my neighborhood, you can't really put in a fully outfitted casita.
Well, thankfully, the city listened to those concerns, and they did address that. They have prohibited these casitas from being used as short-term rentals. And it's important to know that this is not the first time this has been done. Tucson allows casitas. There's other big cities across the nation who allow these, and we can follow that model and make sure that it's implemented in a way that will help working-class families.
And to Councilman Waring's concern, at the latest conference, League of Cities and Towns conference, there was going to be another push to have more common sense regulations and reforms for short-term rentals. And I believe the Phoenix City Council is taking this up in a few weeks. So I understand his concerns. It's legitimate. We don't want, these things to be unregulated, but I think those hopefully will be taken care of in the next session, supposed at the city level and at the state level.
What about the Airbnb issue? Because the legislature has come out against any tinkering by the cities with Airbnbs.
It remains to be seen whether any legislators will try to challenge what the action that the city of Phoenix has taken. But they have brilliant attorneys, they have brilliant staff members who have crafted this ordinance in a way that I feel is legally sound and will give them the authority to make sure that these are being used for people, not for rentals.
And I have to say, since we do some work for the town of Paradise Valley on the short-term rental issue, and since this legislation was signed, I believe in 2016 by then Governor Ducey, the trend in the sharing economy, while people still support it, it. They want more regulations for neighbors. They want, to care about safety. So I see this issue going a different way. So I think there could be a bipartisan solution to have some common sense reforms. I see it trending that way instead of how it was just 5 or 6 years ago.
Okay, so let's now turn to the great minds at the legislature. Representative Ortiz, you worked on bipartisan legislation on housing this past session. It went nowhere, largely because of opposition from cities and towns, right? Mm-hmm. What did you learn from that you think will help you and other lawmakers as you head into a new session and craft some kind of affordable housing legislation?
I'm going to push back on your claim that it went nowhere. We got very far with the zoning reform package. It made it out of committee with bipartisan support, and we got to the floor with these bills. Of course, things went wrong in the end, as they often do at the legislature, but here's the thing. We know that we are in a significant housing shortage. 270,000 units we are missing right now, and we have 200 new residents moving to Arizona every day. This is hitting crisis levels, especially when we have essential workers like firefighters, teachers, nurses who cannot afford a 2-bedroom apartment, according to a recent economic analysis. So absolutely there is opportunity and a demand from the public to find bipartisan solutions on this. Potentially we will clash with the cities again. I'm not going to say that that is not out of the realm of possibilities, but in all reality, I'm overjoyed the city of Phoenix passed this casita ordinance, but it took 3 years to do that. And we see other cities that are very resistant to allowing affordable housing and other types of housing typologies in their communities. So statewide solutions are urgent and necessary.
So what is the sweet spot here? Again, carrying over from the last session to a problem, a crisis, that's not going away. What's the sweet spot to get something all the way through the legislature?
I don't know if it's a sweet spot, but I think it's a necessity and the urgency of the time and the issue. That's why I think when, session reconvenes, I'm sure you'll be doing working groups with cities and other, stakeholders. I think now is the time that we can't just throw our hands up anymore. And I love my cities and towns, and, local preemption is near and dear to their heart, but hopefully they find a way to work this out, because we just don't have enough affordable housing stock. And if it keeps going the way we're going, we're really going to have the haves and the have-nots. So I think necessity and the urgency of the matter will demand some kind of solution, hopefully next year.
And I do want to say something. When we talk about affordable housing, we're not talking about housing for folks with lower incomes. We're talking about housing for all kinds of people.
That's right.
I almost think like we need to redefine that word and maybe use another phrase.
Workforce housing, attainable housing, because what we know is that it is folks across the income spectrum who cannot afford to rent or become homeowners right now. And it creates this trickle-down effect of the worst kind. You have folks like myself, 30 years old, work full-time my whole adult life. I'm college educated. I cannot afford to own a home. I am renting a unit that could go to a family that makes less income than I do. So this is the kind of trickle down that we're seeing, which ends up with people living on the streets or living in their cars.
Okay, we're going to end it there.